Hi, everybody. This is the Health Professional Student Association interview with our 2024 Private University Advisor of the Year. I'm glad to introduce to you Dr. Chloe Lash. She currently is at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio, but she helped a student out when she was working as an assistant professor at the University of St. Francis up in Illinois. So I really appreciate Dr. Lash for you joining us today. Actually, you're starting at university in San Antonio this academic year, so I appreciate you joining us in the midst of all of this transition. A little bit about Dr. Lash, but I will have her go and talk about her journey and all the way up to being a professor. But she has her Bachelor of Science degrees, and I think it's both degrees in biology and chemistry from Valparaiso. Then got her PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, before getting her assistant professorship over at University of St. Francis, and as I said, now at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. So she received this nomination for her for going above and beyond her help with working a very interested pre-veterinary student who needed a lot of support. So I really appreciate Dr. Lash, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about her journey to really helping the student out, especially at a very small university, which doesn't have an infrastructure, the same type of infrastructure that many other students might be accustomed to. So Dr. Lash, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So as I mentioned, introduce yourself, tell us about your journey to becoming a professor.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Chloe Lash, starting at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio in just a couple weeks officially. So just moved down to Texas from Illinois. So I'll start with undergrad and kind of work my way up. So I did a double major degree at Valparaiso University in biology and chemistry. When I was going into college, I knew I wanted to be in science, but I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. So not a health profession for me. So when I did orientation at Valpo, they separated us into two rooms, health professions and everybody else. And that's where I met my advisor, who really is the reason I am where I am today. So I'm happy to return that favor, hopefully, to some of my students. But I started as just a biology major and then really enjoyed chemistry. And at the prompting of one of the chemistry professors, added that double major, which has been really helpful in my research. So that was very serendipitous. While I was at Valpo, I did some research experience for undergraduates. So National Science Foundation has research experience for undergraduates, or REUs. So I did one at University of Michigan, where I was really able to see a research lab for the first time and see and have strong women mentors who had families and had lives outside of academia as well. And who sat me down and said, here's how you get into grad school if you want to go to grad school, and all the things you should be doing to get there. And then I did another one at University of Louisville. And that's where I fell in love with research with ants and plants, which is my primary research area. And then did some research at Valpo as well with bird seed dispersal. So when it came time to look at grad schools, I was poking around a little bit. I applied to, I think, 5 different schools. And in ecology and evolutionary biology, you're not necessarily looking at the school, you're looking at the advisor who you're going to be working with. So I found Dr. Charlie Quitt, who ended up being my PhD advisor. He's at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And he was really interested in ant seed dispersal. So I could bring in my love of ants and my experience with seed dispersal. And I dove into the chemicals and microbes, so like fungi and bacteria that are in that system. So got to kind of build off all of my research opportunities and turn that into a dissertation. While I was at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, where I was for 5 years, to get my PhD, I also mentored in the Mountain Lake Biological Station research experience for undergraduates. So I was able to do another REU, but from the mentor perspective this time, which is a bunch of fun. Mountain Lake is a collection of cabins on a hill. It's a university research station run by University of Virginia. So I did most of my dissertation research up there and had students who helped me with my stuff, and I helped them do some independent projects as well. Then I defended my dissertation in June or July of 2020. So this was, peak pandemic. So I defended on Zoom and then packed up and moved to Illinois, where I was for 4 years as an assistant professor at University of St. Francis in their natural and health sciences department. I was the ecologist, evolutionary biologist, environmental scientist there. And now I'm here.
One, or how many other people were also in the department?
We had we had 9 in the department, and 5 of us were biologists. Okay. So very small school, which is good in some ways and is challenging in some ways, especially for advising, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Mm-hmm. Sure, no problem. And so, and in terms of courses you were teaching, I guess because it's such a small core of biology professors and trying to juggle the teaching as well as your research. How many courses? I mean, were you doing your regular like 3 courses and also run your research lab? I don't know how they balance that for you at first, and certainly by the time you got to your 4th year. Yeah.
So at USF and also at OLU, Our Lady of the Lake, teaching is the primary focus, right? So that's how most of how we're evaluated and things like that. Teaching evals, peer evals, things like that. But research is expected as well, definitely on a smaller scale than a bigger state institution. But we are expected to do research with undergrad. So a lot of what we did at USF, and I anticipate continuing here, is doing some like small scale research throughout the semester. If you can find a student or two, who's interested and wants to get that experience regardless of where they want to go with it, and then hitting that really hard in the summer. So we did have some funding through the University of St. Francis to sponsor undergraduate worker researchers in the summer. So we did some of that, and then had a couple really stellar students who either helped take care of the ants for me during the school years when I was running between classes, or did some research with me. So yeah, typically my load was 3 or 4 classes. So it was 12 credit hours. We were a little short staffed at the time, so we were pretty much all doing overloads. But that was 3 lectures, 3 labs, 4 lectures, 2 labs, things like that. And it'll be about the same at OLU. I'll be 3 lectures, 2 labs every year. So yeah, it's a lot to juggle.
It is a lot to juggle. So forgive me. I know I've had my fair share of my research career too, but I don't think I've had anyone set up an ant lab before. So what is that like? I mean, how was that set up for you? And when you're talking about your students running after ants or making sure, things that you're studying. It's not other ants that are coming in.
Yeah, I should have brought my props. I've got the pile in the garage to take into Our Lady. But the ants that I work with are called Aphenogaster ants. So they're commonly called the winnow ant, but I've never heard anyone commonly refer to them. So they're basically like a medium-sized, pretty skinny ant, but they're really abundant, really across the United States, but especially in the eastern half of the United States in forested environments. And they serve roles in many different ways in their environment, but they are also big seed dispersers. So a lot of like the herbaceous layer of the forest in like the Midwest and, eastern parts of the country. So like your trout lilies, your wild gingers, bloodroot, which is one of the first flowering spring ephemerals. Those all have seeds that have this specialized fleshy appendage on it. And we call that fleshy appendage an elaiosome. And that elaiosome has all these nice chemicals that tell the ant, hey, this is food. So the ants are out foraging, they'll pick those up and they'll eat the elaiosome part and disperse the seed in the process. So we typically think of it as a mutualism, right? Where the ant gets food, the ants get some food primarily for their young, which is really important, and the plants get dispersed. And I'm really interested in like what sorts of chemicals are at play here, because ants have a bunch of different chemicals and a bunch of different glands in their bodies that release things that are like antimicrobial or antibacterial. So what sorts of fungi are they bringing in on the seeds? What are they exposing the seeds to? How does that help the seeds down the line? Things like that. But the nice thing about these ants is you can bring whole colonies back into the lab. So we just get permits, explain what we're doing. And we, a colleague and his family and I made We call them nest boxes. It's basically just two 1x4s that you screw together. And one of those 1x4s, you like route out a little U-shaped groove in, and you toss them out in the forest in the early spring. And then you go check them, and eventually the ants move in, and then you can take the whole colony into the lab. So we had probably a good 40, 50 colonies at one point. We had some, like the summers were a little dry the last few years. So that kind of limits their movement because they don't want to get out into the heat and, dry out and die. But it's nice because then we can keep them and run experiments all throughout the semester. So I had a student recently who she's just wrapping up the summer actually, who was looking at what sorts of seeds are preferred by the ants, because some of these seeds dehiss or let loose at the same time. And we were interested if there's any preference and how that might, ultimately result in differences in plant demographics, but also how that impacts the health of the ant colony, because there have been other studies that show that these eliosomes can be misleading, like they can signal that they're really nutritious when they're not actually that nutritious. So there's a little bit of, butting of heads there between the ants and the plants. So she just finished up some preference trials and then did a survival analysis where we fed ants a certain type of seed to see if that changed how many survived in the colony.
So before we could probably talk a lot more about how all the nuances about that. Although I know I'm on a recording here, and it's like, no, I can't go in that direction. You'll just go, I used to do a lot of undergrad research, and so I could just dive into more and more questions about how did you do that. I guess more interesting questions is, how do you get them? Well, the ants are going to be okay. I mean, you're used to the Illinois climate, and now in Texas, hopefully they're still going to be really resilient, or there's not, I don't know how large the spread of the species is between, in those two parts of the country.
Yeah. So the plants aren't here, but a different species in the same genus of ants are. So I'm going to have to tweak a little bit, but I think we can find some fun things to do down here.
Okay. So obviously, people, getting people excited to do the work that you're doing. How do you do that with undergrads to try to get them to work in your lab? What are some of the things that you've done, and what have what types of students would you be looking for to help you out?
Yeah, so we are one of the best parts of being kind of the ecologist and environmental person is usually one of the gen biologies is more organismal focused. So I'm teaching some of our gen bio organismal this fall at OLU too. But usually you can do a little spiel in class about what you do and get students starting to think about research as a part of their undergraduate journey. And that's really where science is going, and something that USF did really well. And OLU is also striving for is to get research into the classroom. So rather than working through these kind of, cookbook labs where we know the answer, giving them more of an authentic research experience, right? And we're talking shoestring budgets and limited time. So it's not, we're not going to cure cancer in these labs, but getting them some of that like exploratory troubleshooting sort of experience. So especially at USF, they would do that in their freshman labs. And we would give them a good like overview of, if you're interested in microbiology, here's the professor you want to talk to. If you're interested in environmental stuff, go talk to Dr. Lash. If you're interested in genetics, here's who you go to, and things like that. And the students, like if they've heard about research, get excited pretty quickly. If they haven't, sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect, and we've got to convince them that this is how science is. Like, we don't want to just feed you a bunch of facts. We want to show you like how the facts were put together. So we're going to give you this, semi-authentic experience to do that. So they kind of self-select in some ways. And, I just want students who are going to be persistent, right? Give something a try, even if they're, not going to go to grad school in ecology. That's totally fine. They can at least get this experience. And actually the student who has been working with me the last couple of years is going to go to PT school, right? So she's not going to be working with ants, but she wanted a research experience on her resume. So I think they have fun when they get into it, but sometimes it's like, you get the pre-med students who are like, I just want to learn a bunch of facts. Like, just tell me what I need to know. We're like, well, we're going to push you a little bit beyond that. But
Right.
yeah.
So I don't know, have you had anybody who's like more pre-med or that? I mean, the pre-vet student that obviously you worked with, was that one of your research students, or was it somebody else totally different in terms of advising?
She actually took care of the ants for me. She was one of our science fellows, so employed by the department to help with things. And I think I can say she grew quite fond of the ants by the time she was done. I had her in other classes where we did research, but she didn't do research with me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, certainly one of the nice things about being in the smaller institution is that you do get to see students multiple times. It's just not just one class and that's it. And also the size of the classes are also generally smaller. Like I'm going to guess probably 50, maybe fewer than 50 students per lecture that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually fewer than 50. I think our max at USF was around 40. I'm not quite sure at OLU yet, but for the big like intro lectures, 20 to 30. We try to keep those small so that the students can make connections with their professor and each other. So even if that means, we need to do 2 sections instead of 1, it's just a good way for them to get more comfortable, especially for first semester students, who don't know what to expect or things like that. So, but it is really nice getting them multiple times, right? You're pretty much guaranteed to get somebody in intro and then in one of the upper level electives or things like that, which is good. And I think it's nice for the students too, to like know classroom expectations and things like that going in.
Right. So you mentioned, obviously, there has always been an ongoing movement to make sure that there's a little bit more of a research component in the way that we teach biology and the general sciences too. What sort of things have you been have you helped with, or have you seen your department or your the dean of I don't know how everything is organized, whether there's a dean of a college for a section of the science departments or it's a larger unit. But I do want to get a sense of how undergraduate research has been. As you mentioned, you can talk about it in the classroom, but how is it otherwise sort of created as some sort of a core sort of, I don't know if it's a core value, but it's like a core theme for one's undergraduate education.
Yeah. So the AAAS, which I can never remember what that stands for, a while ago, maybe 2011, like put out the vision and change in biology, right? And that was kind of the big push for like, hey, like let's shift from this, how it's normally portrayed in movies, right? Where you go into this stuffy lecture hall where there's 500 other people and the professor just talks at you for 50 minutes, and into a little bit more interactive sorts of things. And part of that is research. So OLU, for example, we just ran a CURE workshop. So CURE is a course-based undergraduate research experience, which is a growing movement, again, in undergraduate education, in an attempt to kind of get research into some of our labs here, but also beyond science as well. So thinking we had, someone from sociology there, we had people from academic affairs, right? Thinking about how we can get students engaged in like actually doing things. And yeah, it was really integral at USF as well. We did intro to research classes, advanced research classes, and then we incorporated it into any classes we could. So I taught ecology, and we do like rapid ecological studies in there, or I taught animal behavior, where, we spent some time learning some like typical methods that are used in animal behavior, like staring at crickets for an hour and, noting all of their behaviors, and then letting the students kind of take what they've learned and apply it to their own research question. And then I do think, like, I mentioned earlier that, teaching is most of how we're evaluated and how, it's our most important aspect of our job. I think most of us would say it, especially at these smaller institutions, but we are, just as dedicated to research and continuing, because, that's what we love too. And helping students get involved and see all the difficulties and, frustrations and things like that in the meantime. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, or at least as best as I know, we could probably talk about it, unless you wound up being like director of undergraduate research or something.
Right, right.
So I understand that totally. In terms of this, so in terms, obviously, I don't know what the demeanor is of the students that you've taught in terms of obviously getting them excited about their degrees or anything else like that. There's always a lot of discussion about how students, whether, and especially the last few years after the pandemic, may seem a little bit less engaged than I guess prior to it. And I don't know, obviously you were not a professor prior to the prior to the pandemic, but you were a student. So you may know from TAing or something like that as a grad student. I don't know what your thoughts are in terms of how teaching, students during and post-pandemic, what that was like, and how things, what things can do for students to sort of break out of, being afraid of doing stuff, I guess.
Yeah, this is the question right now. I mean, I've had these discussions with colleagues, like not just at my institutions, but across the board. It's just something has shifted, right? And even though I wasn't like a professor, like I was a TA, right? But it's a slightly different role. But even from like 2020 fall to 2021 fall to 2022 fall, there's just a shift, right? And these students, who miss part of maybe their integral high school experience because of the pandemic, or, who knows what's going on, right? Our students also are juggling a lot. It's been kind of a privilege wake up for me, right? Like when I was an undergrad, I worked, but it was like 10 to 15 hours a week, right? Like my primary job was going to school and getting my degree and doing well in my classes. And we've got students who are trying to juggle full-time jobs and, family expectations and things like that. So they are juggling a lot, and recognizing that in the classroom is important. But the engagement's definitely down. I think we kind of dipped in the last year. I think it came back up a little bit, and obviously it's class specific and things like that. But I don't know. I don't have a good way to motivate, right? Like some of it's got to be internal. And, sometimes I think it's also just saying, I know that ecology is not your favorite thing, and like, that's okay, right? Like I don't expect you, just because you're taking my ecology class, to go and be an ecologist, right? Most of them, I've had 3 students, in my 4 years who actually wanted to go into ecology. So, acknowledging that with them, and still explaining why it's important and connecting it to other things, right? Like it's very easy to connect ecology to human disease, right? And thinking about that like human wildlife interface. So we talk about Lyme disease and why that's growing, and, climate change and things like that. So I think trying to make the connections where we can help with the engagement, showing your love for science, right? When I think back on my past professors and teachers, the ones who were the best were the ones who cared, and, about their students, but also about their subjects, and were just passionate. So some of it's that, and some of it's just having those conversations with, like, sometimes you just gotta put your head down and push through. Like, we know it's hard right now. We're going to give you the support that we can give you. We can point you to whatever services you need. Just stick with it.
Yeah. So let's go into your journey helping your pre-vet student, the person who was helping in your lab. So how did she approach you, saying that she needed help with getting into vet school, and just sort of walk us through what that was like from start to finish, if you can.
Yeah. So I was at USF for 4 years, and part of our role is advising students, undergraduate students as well. At, like larger institutions, there might have like professional advising or things like that. Generally at smaller schools, at least for like the last 2 or 3 years, you're with a professor who's helping you map out the course. Because of my area of interest, so animals and, the natural world, most of the pre-vet students were sent my way. And we at USF had we put together, they weren't like technically like concentrations, but they were like guidelines for the students to make sure that they're getting the classes that they most need, right? So if you're a pre-med student, we want to make sure we get you into at least calculus or stats, right? But also anatomy and physiology and all of those things. So we use those to kind of help guide the students. So this student ended up with me as her advisor. Generally, in the first year that they come in, at least this has switched within the last 2 years, but at that time, in the spring, they meet with their professor advisor for the first time, and we kind of talk about, what are you thinking career wise, right? It's okay if you don't know, but let's start thinking about it so that we can make sure to kind of map out your progress through this degree so that we can get you to where you think you want to go at this point. And it changes, which is totally fine. This student always wanted to be a vet, never wavered, super motivated, super brilliant, right? She knew what she wanted. She knew how to get there. So we worked on some like 3-year plans for her. We got her out a little early with some summer classes and things like that. And that was a lot of her own motivation, right? Thinking like, here's what I could pull off my plate, like as far as gen eds and things like that during the summer so that I can get into the science classes that I need in the fall and the spring. But then also as the advisor, part of our role was, when we have those faculty meetings where we're planning the schedule for the next semester or 2 semesters away or whatever, saying, okay, I've got an advisee who's going to need this and this semester. So we're going to make sure that they're not conflicting. Or, we've got someone who needs this course. We normally wouldn't offer it until the spring, but we're going to see if we can fit it in the fall. And that's, obviously super small department. We do all we can. We have some oversights, of course, because we're human. And, if you're juggling, I had like 9 or 10 advisees. Others had, 15 or 20 because they'd been there a little longer. You're going to miss some things. But, having those discussions about, okay, who is, on track to graduate? What do they need? What can we do to help them get there? And some of that might be, maybe we need to move this course away from this course, or maybe we need to offer like a tutorial option potentially for them or things like that. It's a lot of staring at, an Excel spreadsheet and trying to make sure there's no conflicts. And then when there are unavoidable conflicts, trying to see what we can do to get around them, which, might mean, students might have to choose another elective or something like that, but we try to do the best that we can. But, with 9 people in, that was our biologist, chemist, and physicist, right? If I'm teaching senior seminar and animal behavior, those things obviously can't be at the same time. So they're going to be, they might conflict with something else. But that was kind of the goal, to help, get people out when they need to get out. Because, it's expensive. She was ready to move on to the next thing, very much so. So we spent a lot of time crafting that accelerated plan, and it all worked somehow amazingly. So, yeah.
Well, I credit all of your faculty to being able to, obviously you have to keep your 3 and 2 loads as well to try to not overburden anybody on that. And how much, I do understand that's a lot of time. I mean, how often were you meeting with this student? Did you start her, I guess it was her sophomore year then, that you really started going through and carefully going through that anticipated 3-year schedule of courses?
Yeah. So students, like typically, half hour to hour advising session every semester, right? So we can plan their, so we can get them registered for the next semester. So, if you've got 10 advisees, that's, between 5 and 10 hours plus the prep time, right? To like go through their schedule, make sure you're reading through their notes from the last advising meeting, things like that. And this student, I think we probably did a couple extra meetings too, just to make sure things were on track. Or if I had like some special cases and I knew we were going to have a department meeting about schedule, like I might shoot them an email or have them come in and talk to me and say, here's what I have you for next semester. This is what I'm going to take into this meeting. Is this what you're thinking as well? And it's very helpful, right, when the students are that motivated and, know how to use the catalog. And we did run a new degree audit system when I was there, which was great because the old one was a little cumbersome to read,
Oh,
but
yeah.
when they can kind of figure out those things. And also, I talk about those concentrations, but that's not, that's not us saying like, if you take these classes, you will definitely get into vet school, right? We have looked at some of the like closest or the highest ranking vet or medical or PT or whatever programs, and we are pulling the classes that they most often require. But it's also important for you as a student to think about where you want to go and look at those requirements. And this student was really good about like, okay, here are my top 5 schools. I need stats for these schools, so I'm going to do stats and not calculus, or I don't need anatomy, but I do need physiology or things like that. So part of it's, in any good mentee mentor relationship, right? Part of it's on the mentee to say, here's what I need from you.
So who were your what type of behaviors did you find were most productive, gave your most productive meetings? So the ones, did they give you something like a week ahead or a day ahead, or how did I just want to get a sense of what these productive mentees were like.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it's just coming in and being comfortable, right? We're here to help you. We're not, we don't expect you to have all the answers, but come in as prepared as you can be, right? So thinking through, at least look at your degree audit, think about what you might want to take next semester. Some of those are super prescribed, right? Like you're always going to take Gen Bio 1 and then Gen Bio 2, or, cell biology and then genetics or whatever. But, what other things you might want to, and then think about where you're going. When you hit that like sophomore, junior level, start to like seriously look at requirements. That way we don't get to your last semester and we're not offering that one last class that you need to get into, that program. So I guess preparedness and just being comfortable, asking questions, asking for help when you need it. And I think that helps the most.
That's useful too. Obviously you weren't around any of the pre-med students because obviously they all rank, they all want to find experiences. But your pre-vet student also needed some experiences too, in terms of all the different types of requirements that usually comes in, and your PT student does as well. I don't know about whether at USF or at OLU, what they do or how you help them find opportunities, if that's part of your purview, or if you have any insights on how they are able to find these other types of opportunities while they're students.
Yeah, so that wasn't so much my role at USF. I don't know if it is at OLU. I will say the students were very good at finding those opportunities and kind of helping each other. So we did have a health professions association. There might be another word in there, but like club on campus where, seniors could help freshmen and say, you need this many hours of shadowing, or, patient hours or whatever. And, here's where I volunteer, here's who I work with. Where I was at USF, there were like an insane amount of PT clinics around. So a lot of our students were like, helping in those clinics, doing scheduling, or, kind of working their way up to some of those assistant duties and things like that. So that's mostly student driven, which is good, but a little bit of, me connecting people who might be able to help if I can't.
So according to the student that nominated you, she said that you definitely went above and beyond what most faculty advisors were, I guess, expected to do. So such as like do a review of her VMCAS applications, maybe even doing some mock interviews. I just want to get a sense of, obviously that's a lot of time on top of that. So kudos to you for that. But talk to me a little bit about what that was like. And especially, you're not immersed in the pre-vet advising world. So trying to, also walk step by step, beside her as she's going through this process. What was that like for you, and how did you help her prepare while also learning how to build the ship while you're flying, while you're flying it?
Yeah, I started always with a caveat as I'm not a vet professional. So like if I give you feedback and it is contrary to what someone who is in that field has told you, then do not listen to me, right? Like, you will not hurt my feelings. But I usually, I mean, part of being a professor too, right, is writing letters of recommendation. So I usually, when students ask me for a letter of rec, have them send me the application call, right? So everything they're supposed to do. And then if they're comfortable, to send me what they're sending in as well. And I usually offer to like read through it if they need it at that point. And I mean, I would not have gotten into those summer programs as an undergrad or into grad school, right, without the help of mentors reading through things and saying, you know, you should say this way, or, you know, this is a typo, or things like that. So trying to kind of return that to my students, because I would not have gotten where I am today without that help. Yeah, just doing some proofreading, editing, things like that, writing those letters of rec. And I do offer, I do offer that to students within reason, right? I can't do it for everybody, but especially those students who are my advisees, or at USF, we had a course called Senior Seminar. And I taught that course a number of times. And in that course, we're trying to help them kind of prep for the transition to the next stage. I don't think I had my pre-vet student in Senior Seminar, but we do like mock interviews with them. In that class, we do like CV resume building and feedback. We connect them to the Career Center, things like that. Mm-hmm. But, a mock interview goes a long way, right? Like 20 minutes, I had compiled some questions from vet school programs, most common questions, and then just give them a chance to run through it and, look for the nerves and try to give some feedback and things like that too. Cause that is nerve wracking, especially in light of COVID, right? Where we weren't doing face-to-face interactions for so long, or, students are expected to hop on Zoom and do an interview, which is, not something that they've done before. So, yeah, I mean, and I guess we call that kind of the hidden workload of being a professor is helping with those things. But I think it's important. Like I said, I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't had professors who were willing to do that for me.
Should I ask how early the student actually brought you a copy of her Vimcast draft?
Very early,
actually.
Also
asked you for your letter.
Yeah, very early. And she's exceptional, like always ahead of the game. I think she sent it to me probably like 3 or 4 months before the app was due. It was to the point where I was like, okay, you have to repeatedly email me and remind me to do this, because if it's not due right now, I might forget about it. And I've had students who, maybe a job opportunity pops up and it's due in a week, and they respectfully ask, if I can give them some feedback, and we kind of work within that time frame if we can. But this student in particular was months ahead of the time. And that's what I encourage students to do, right? Start these things early, because it's just going to be so much better for you. It's going to be a better product at the end, right? You can have people read through it. I can write a letter of rec and then put it aside for a week and then come back and edit, right? Or add extra experiences or whatever has happened in that time. You can give it to your mom to read through for grammar and things like that. So that's obviously not always going to be the case, but the sooner the better, just because you can do more revising and, listening to feedback and things, versus if you've got a week turnaround, you've got to decide really quickly, are you going to take all my edits or not? Right. So, yeah.
So what we're also sort of related to that, even young freshmen or sophomores who are just starting out, and they may be interested in some sort of a summer opportunity, hopefully a summer research opportunity. I know I've benefited from that. I guess you must have, either both in undergrad as well as grad school. Could you give us an idea of what advice you would give those underclassmen about, at your school, it's probably a little bit different because the student professor ratio is so close to each other. But your thoughts in general about helping, freshmen and sophomores be organized when it comes to preparing a summer research opportunity application?
Yeah, I think it's, if you're looking to stay local and work at that, college, university, wherever you are, Talk to your professors, do a little bit of work beforehand, right? If you're really interested in ants, then maybe spend a little bit of time, reading up on the system that I study or something like that. You don't have to necessarily read papers that I've written, right? Because that might be a little bit of a reach at this point in your career, which is totally fine. But do a little bit of work and then go talk to that person, right? So here is why I'm interested in doing research with you. Do you have opportunities, right? And I think, from the faculty perspective, getting really motivated freshmen and sophomores in the lab who can work with you for 3 or 4 years, I mean, that's great, right? It takes time for us to train you, to work you up to the point where you can be more independent. So the sooner you get in, the better. And especially for like freshmen, sophomores, you might start, if you're at a bigger institution, you might start working with a grad student, or you might just be cleaning dishes for a little bit or things like that. But see what opportunities are available to kind of get your foot in the door. A lot of institutions have like more formal summer programs that you can apply to. And again, I would emphasize, make that connection to a professor's work, even if you haven't talked to that person, right? So like when I was mentoring at Mountain Lake, we got to choose our mentees from, a giant list, but usually the program head would go through the list and kind of parse out, okay, here's who said they want to work with Chloe. Here's who said they want to work with, some other lab. And then we'd go through, and the first thing that's going to jump out to those professors is, can you make a connection to what they're doing, right? Are you just, throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, or are you actually interested in what this lab is doing? And I tell my students, it's not like I'm looking for someone who wants to continue my work, right? Or to work with ants for forever. But I want you to want the research experience. That way, even if you hate it, you're only doing it for a few months, right? And then you can know, okay, research, with this area or research in general is not where I want to be. So put in a little bit of the grunt work. And then if you can do some of those kind of more guided things, you'll be even more competitive for some of those national programs by the time you're a sophomore or junior. So those National Science Foundation REUs that I was talking about, I think NSF just started a like post-bac program, like for year-long research in labs. Some of those have been popping up. I think NIH has similar things, right? So talk to your professors, see what they know about, and they can kind of point you in the right direction and help you with some of those apps too.
So I'll have a last couple of questions just sort of coming in as we're trying to wrap up. One is advice to other faculty members, especially newer faculty members like your own, who are coming into similar sized institutions of your own, probably not used to having such a small infrastructure, or having a little bit, I don't know how much more assistance one might need in regards to research at a small college. What sort of advice would you give like relatively newer professors, especially in terms of as they're starting out, trying to balance all of these responsibilities, really trying to get an understanding of the research, the teaching, service, all that other stuff. I don't know if you had prior training like with preparing future faculty or anything else like that prior to that or not.
Yeah, so I did some teaching, like certification things, which helped a lot. But I think honestly, the biggest help is just ask your colleagues for help, right? Like ask the silly questions that you think everybody should know that you don't, right? Like how many office hours am I was putting together syllabi yesterday, right? And I texted my new colleagues. I'm like, how many office hours are we expected to have, right? Because it's those things that are ingrained in the institution that you just don't know because you haven't started there. And it was the same way at USF. I had great colleagues who were willing to help show us. There were actually 3 of us who were new on tenure track that year. So they would, help us figure out printing and classrooms and all of that stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing. If you can get teaching training before you get thrown into the deep end, that's great too. I mean, it's going to make you look more attractive to those, in that search committee anyway, but it helps a lot with like, how do you put together a syllabus? How do you think about what you want the students to know, and how does that fit in the course catalog description and things like that. And, also ask for, don't reinvent the wheel, right? If you've got colleagues who are teaching the same thing, ask to share materials, right? And do some give and take that way. And then with advising, especially ask for help, right? Like learning a new catalog and all of the requirements and things, like, after 4 years at USF, I still felt like there were things that I was forgetting. So just, I probably asked my department chair the same question 13 times, right, through those 4 years. But keep asking those questions instead of making mistakes. And, and you will make mistakes, and that's okay too. It happens. Yeah.
Sure. And the last question that I know I have here, I do want to get a sense of what you would advise students to do to get the strongest possible letter of recommendation from you if they came to you asking for help that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, the first thing I encourage students to think about is, what is your professor's title, right? Like if someone is going into a pharmacy school, a letter from an ecologist is going to look good, but a letter from, our biomed person is going to look even better, right? So think about who you're asking for. Make sure you have a decent relationship with them. If you've taken more than one class with them, that's helpful for us, right? We can say, I had them in this, and this class. Here's a good example of when they were independent or when they worked as a team or things like that. Think about performance in those classes. I won't say that like you have to be an A student to get a good letter of rec from me, right? But I'm going to be looking for motivation, how you acted just in general in those classes, how you treat your classmates, things like that. And then I also encourage students to think about what sorts of things I specifically can address that others might not, right? So like if I had you in a research class, I can talk about your persistence and your teamwork and your leadership and things like that. Whereas maybe, another letter of rec writer can talk about, how easygoing you are or things like that, right? So think about like what you want from each letter writer. But I think like, good performance, good mentality, good motivation, right? Just being a decent person, that's going to get you the best letter. And I tell students, if I feel like I can't write you a strong letter, I'm not going to say yes to letter writing, right? And that's not necessarily my judgment on you in this profession, right? But if I had you 4 years ago and I haven't talked to you since, there's probably other professors who would be better letter writers for you or things like that. So think about building those relationships and those connections, and then ask early, right? So like, I tell my graduating seniors this all the time. If you think that you're going to want a letter from me, even if it's 5 years down the line, ask now. I'll put you on my list. When I have a free 10 minutes, I'll jot down some things. That way, when you ask me for that letter down the road, I have that list to go off of, right? I don't have to like sit and think back to, okay, what did John do in, 2020 that I can pull from for this letter. And then, if you're comfortable sharing application materials, that also helps me write a really good letter, right? And I don't ever make students share that because they might not want to share that with me, and that is totally fine. But I can definitely make sure that what I'm saying in my letter then lines up with what you're saying in your letter, right? And even if I'm not writing you a letter, I can look at application materials or whatever if you need.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lash or Chloe, whichever. I should have probably asked what you preferred me to address you as. But thank you so much for talking with the people who decided to join us for this webinar. And I wish you well in your career. Hopefully we'll be in touch in some future. And if you need our help for anything, please don't hesitate to let us know. We're here to help you guys too.
Great, thank you.